Hi, and welcome to Cookery's holiday cooking videos. I'm Chef Jessica Roberts, a culinary instructor with Cookery, and over the past few weeks, I've been sharing with you some sweet treats that I like to have over the holidays. Today, I'm going to share with you something savory that you could enjoy with a glass of wine, or you could even gift to a neighbor as a little treat for them. I would probably keep it for myself. It's so delicious, but it is the time to give. We're actually making two things today. We're making a savory shortbread that features some bacon and some fresh rosemary. We're also doing a marinated olive, or olives, I should say, not just one, as you'll want to eat several. And they're both quick things that you can put together and keep on hand when you're just feeling like a glass of wine, something special, or like I said, a little gift for a neighbor or friend. So we need to get our rosemary started for our shortbread today. We need to take the leaves off of the rosemary sprig. And the way that I do that is that I sort of hold it from the top and working against sort of the leaves, how they grow. I just pull the leaves right off until I get all of those lovely aromatic little leaves off of the rosemary stem. So I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. For my recipe today, I need 2 tablespoons of fresh herbs. Now, of course, you could use thyme, you could use whatever you've got on hand. I'm using rosemary today. It just smells so festive. So I've got my little pile of rosemary leaves here, and I'm just going to give them a little quick chop to break up any sort of, tougher stems that might have found its way into my little pile, and to make it a little easier to incorporate into my shortbread. So I'm looking for about 2 tablespoons. Of course, you could make this recipe with dried herbs if that's what you've got on hand. And the general rule for fresh to dry herbs is to have 1 tablespoon of fresh equals 1 teaspoon of dried. So for this recipe, needing 2 tablespoons of fresh, you would need 2 tablespoons of dried herbs instead. So just breaking these up a little bit. So like I said, they incorporate right in there, and every little bite of cookie that you get gets a little bit of rosemary flavor. All right, this looks good. Almost done here. And I think I've got about 2 tablespoons there. Of course, if you feel like measuring it when you make these, please go ahead. All right, that looks great. I've got everything else ready to go in my stand mixer today. The ingredients that I'm using, very simple in shortbread. Of course, a really good dose of butter, unsalted butter, which I'll throw right into my stand mixer right now. I've cubed the butter up into about 1/2-inch cubes, so it makes it easier to mix. Now, we don't want these to be overly sweet because it is a savory shortbread, but I am putting a little bit of sugar, so 1 teaspoon, or I should say tablespoon of packed brown sugar right in there. And then I've got my dry ingredients. So I've got some flour, and I've weighed this out today. So the recipe does call for 280 grams of flour, but if you don't have a kitchen scale, 2 1/4 cups of flour is what you'll need. So there, I've got my flour, and I've got my bacon. I had 6 strips of bacon that I've cooked until crisp, and I've chopped them up so they're nice small bits. I'm going to add my rosemary right in there. Oh, that beautiful rosemary. And just a teeny bit of salt. I don't need too much salt because the bacon has a bit of salt in it, but just a tiny bit, so 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So those are my dry ingredients, the flour, the bacon, the fresh rosemary, and the salt. Just give them a little stir in my bowl to incorporate everything. And now all I need to do is do a little mixing of my butter and sugar together. So I'm just going to start on low speed in my stand mixer. You could definitely use hand beaters instead if that's what you've got, but I'm going to use my stand mixer today. I'm going to start it slow, and as it sort of moves around in there and starts mixing, I'm going to move it up to a little bit of a medium speed. And I'm just really looking to break up the butter cubes and to sort of soften it up for about 2 minutes. All right, so that is starting to come together. I'm just going to turn it up a little bit. And again, I'm just looking for that dough to sort of gather up around the beaters, and then I know it's done. there. I'm just going to scrape down the sides of the bowl one more time to make sure that I've got everything nicely mixed. What I love about this recipe is it comes together really quickly. All right, one more little mix and we'll be done. And there we go. So I'm just going to show you what that dough looks like in the bowl so you have reference on what yours should look like when you make these. So the dough has sort of come together into some, larger sort of forms in there, and that's just what I'm looking for. And I can just sort of smush it together in my hands and I'll have a nice workable dough. Getting everything off of my beaters. And then all I need to do is just scrape down my bowl. Get everything out of there, and now my dough is ready for rolling. What I love about this shortbread recipe is that I don't roll it out with a rolling pin, is I put it in a log in some parchment paper, and then they're really easy to slice, and then I can keep some of the dough frozen and bake it as I need it if I have someone that I need to give some cookies to, or I just feel like a few fresh ones for myself. So I'm just going to tip the dough out onto my piece of parchment here. Again, getting all that dough off of the spatula, no wasting. And I like to make these cookies into actually about 1 inch sort of rounds, really nice little bites that you can just enjoy on a little snack plate with some cheese, just something, a little nibble. So what I like to do is actually divide the dough and roll it into 2 separate logs. And all I do is I take my dough, it's very soft at this point, and I'm just going to make a cylinder shape. I can't even say that word. A cylinder shape with my cookie dough. And I'm just going to keep rolling it until it's fairly equal in diameter. And like I said, I like them to be about 1 inch. You can certainly make them larger by making a larger size roll, but I love that just sort of little bite of a cookie. So I've just got a cutting board with a flat side, not one with rounded corners. And I'm just going to turn my parchment paper over until sort of the sides meet here. I'm going to take my cutting board and sort of put it on top, and I just pick up that first layer. And if I start shoving back while holding this top layer, then it helps me get a nice smooth log. So I'm going to open this up and recenter my dough, and just do this process a couple of times until that roll is nice and round. Just makes it look a little bit more sort of professional, even though you did it yourself. So there we go, a nice round roll. I'm just going to roll this up. I'll give the end of the parchment a little twist, and then I'm going to put this roll right into the freezer and let it chill for at least 20 minutes before I slice and bake. Now, of course, you can just leave it in this roll wrapped well in saran wrap, and you can just have them in your freezer ready to go whenever you'd like. So it's time to slice and bake our savory bacon shortbread. So I've taken one of the rolls out of the freezer, and because it wasn't in there super long, I'm going to be able to slice it from a semi-frozen state. But if they are completely frozen, they've been in there for several hours or days, you want to bring them out and let them sort of come to room temperature for about 15 to 20 minutes before you slice them. So I'm just going to unroll my cookie dough, and this piece of parchment that I use to roll it, I'm just going to use that right now on my cookie sheet to help keep it clean, no need to waste. And now I'm just going to take my log of dough and cut it into about 1/4 inch rounds, making sure that they're even in thickness so that they bake evenly. And because they were in the freezer for about 20 minutes. They slice really well and simply. So if you're making them this size, like I have, about 1 inch in diameter, You're going to find that this recipe makes about 5 dozen cookies, which is great because then there's lots to share. So a nice sharp knife helps to go through that dough really easily. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my lovely little cookie rounds and put them on my baking tray, about an inch apart. They don't spread too much, but you want to leave a bit of space for even baking. And I'm just going to put these all on my tray, and I'm going to bake them for about 25 to 30 minutes at 300 degrees. A nice low bake for a long temperature gets them nice and firm and crisp. And of course, these little ends, I call them little butts, you know, they're good too. You might not want to give them away because they don't look as nice, but they're still edible. So these are going to go in the oven now. Got my beautiful tray of cookies ready to go. So my cookies are all baked and I've got my olives marinating. It's almost time for me to enjoy them. I just need to pour myself a nice glass of wine, and I've got a beautiful little snack to enjoy the holiday season with. Even though it's really strange times this year, make sure that you spend time thinking about the things that matter and enjoying just really good food with the family and friends that you're able to see this year, and really just find the little bits of joy that there is. And right now, my joy is going to be enjoying one of these cookies.